Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is going to be a lightning fast episode of Story Sundays, the show in which you leave questions in the comments down below about the zombie storyline, and then the following week, I answer those questions in the next episode of Story Sundays. I've got to be quick because I've got a flight in 3 hours, so I'm zooming right now. I've got to get this edited ASAP. The first question comes from Hostile Corpse, and rather than doing like 10 questions in this episode, I'm going to basically go deeper on one particular question and really explore that sort of general topic, okay? So, first question, Hostile Corpse asks it and says, I want to know who the Oracle is and why she's helping the Chaos crew. Now, I recently had a bunch of questions about the Chaos story on Twitter, and so I figured that doing a kind of Chaos-themed episode could be fun, and I haven't really done that much talking about Chaos yet, so there's plenty to discuss. So, the Oracle. We hear about the Oracle in 9 and in Voyage, not so much in Dead of the Night though. Dead of the Night being a prequel means that we don't really tend to hear about those sort of future events that are going to be happening, but that's okay, we can come back to that for another question or another episode. If we look back though at 9 and Voyage, we start to get a feeling that the Oracle is kind of involved behind the scenes a little bit with what the characters are doing, but we're not exactly sure the nature of it. Now then, I today want to jump in with a little bit of actual historical information and mythological information just to kind of get your imagination firing about where this could go and the implications of how far Treyarch could run with this if they wanted to. So, who is the Oracle and why is she helping the Chaos crew? Well, the Oracle at Delphi was a historical/mythological figure who resided, you guessed it, at Delphi. Now, the kind of legend of the Oracle of Delphi is very much intertwined with the god Apollo, but even before Apollo came into the picture, there was still a legend of this Oracle at Delphi. The story goes that a shepherd was walking his sheep, I suppose. Is that a thing? Do shepherds walk their sheep? I don't know. It's like walking your dog, except it's a sheep? I don't know. Anyway, the shepherd was walking their sheep and they came across a great fissure in the floor, a massive chasm. And when they went near it, they started going kind of crazy, but also getting these divine intuitions about the future and kind of knowledge that humanity would just never have and things like that. And people started hearing about this, going crazy about it because they were like, yo, there's some free knowledge coming out of the ground. I want a piece of that for myself. And so eventually it was decided that only one person would be able to go and actually be near this chasm because otherwise everyone would just fall in and die. So you end up with one person at the chasm, and that person ends up being the Oracle at Delphi. Now, it's always a woman, and Apollo comes into the picture, the Greek god Apollo, because essentially there's a beast in Greek myth called Python, which, as you might guess, is a big old snake, and it belongs to Mother Earth, who is called Gaia. And that kind of makes sense. An animal belongs to the Earth. Sure, okay. So Gaia keeps Python at Delphi, and the story goes that Apollo kills Python, but as part of the story, Apollo decides to keep the Oracle at Delphi as a kind of mouthpiece to speak to humanity and to be able to sort of communicate with people and stuff like that. The Oracle, therefore, because of that, inherits the name Pythia. So, anyway, there were 5 temples, I think, built in total that were temples of the oracles, and there were actually multiple oracles in the end at each temple just because of the fact that so many people wanted to get this divine knowledge from this oracle and hear what they were going to say. There were very specific rituals about when you were and weren't allowed to talk to the oracles. Also, the way it would work is that you talk to the oracle, but then the oracle's message would be interpreted by priests, and so you would get kind of like a filtered version of the message, and the oracle also wouldn't always give you a clear answer. So you might ask, where is my missing daughter, for example, and the oracle might then say something that would only constitute a riddle rather than a location. So they could be kind of tricksters if they wanted to, or they could just give you kind of hard facts. So, those 5 temples that I mentioned were all built on springs, like hot water springs essentially, and that water, that liquid, was used for purification by the oracles. Now, one particular temple that we're going to focus on here was built on 2 fault lines. So, fault lines are basically where tectonic plates are shifting in the Earth's crust. You've got different kinds of fault lines because those tectonic plates might be moving in different directions depending on where you are on the planet. And at this particular one, because you had those crossing fault lines, you actually had vapors emerging from the cracks in the floor. Now, the temple was built on those fissures, on those cracks, and so in the cellar of the temple itself, where the oracle might sit and kind of mount themselves on this little tripod thing over the fumes. They would then wait for themselves to go into like a trance-like state, and then they would answer questions from people. So that's kind of the flow of it, is they breathe in these vapors coming out of the earth, coming from Mother Earth or Gaia, and then that would put them into a trance-like state, and they'd then be able to give you this intuition and this divine knowledge. The vapors were described as the sweetest and most expensive possible perfumes. And so once those had been breathed in, it would then be the priest's turn to try and interpret what the oracle was saying when the oracle was there on their tripod. Now, just for a second, put yourself in the shoes of a person in what? It must have been really a long time ago, like 1400 BC to 381 AD. Long time ago now. Put yourself in the shoes of someone that knows very little about the world, okay? Obviously, you don't have things like the internet. You are pretty much a caveman, and you walk into a cave, you see a big crack in the floor with gas coming out, and you see a woman sitting on a metal stool over those fumes, high as hell, ready to answer whatever questions you have. Just imagine that. It's pretty wild, right? But it's also fantastic cannon fodder for storytelling, and that's why the Greeks enjoyed it so much to wrap the oracle into their Greek myths. There's a whole bunch of Greek myths that involve the oracle, people going for advice, for suggestions, for locations, for questions, all sorts of stuff. And it's also kind of evidence of why Treyarch would include it in their story as well. Oracles are just perfect for mixing things up, giving you someone that has this kind of insight that you can't normally get. Like Scarlet could never have that kind of knowledge or anything like that, whereas this oracle is literally a plot device used to almost give you information that you otherwise wouldn't be able to give the reader, and to start people on quests and things like that that you otherwise might not be able to get to. And this fits in perfectly with 9. We see our characters in that little room, breathing in the vapors, and we hear the oracle talking to them, saying, "You are travelers," and basically explaining what they need to do, sending them back in time to complete the trial of 9 itself. Only then are they going to be able to open the door that they need to open. So, to go back to the question, Hostile Corpse, who's the oracle? Well, it could be one of many oracles, depending on what time and stuff like that, but generally, the oracle is a very knowledgeable figure who gets absolutely high on the fumes of the earth, answers the questions of the Chaos Crew, and by the way, why she answers the questions of the Chaos Crew is a good question. The way that it would have worked is oracles would prioritize certain people so that they could essentially get through the queue of questions that they would have. So, first of all, they would prioritize people from Delphi because it was the oracle at Delphi, and then Delphi would nominate another location whose people would then also have their questions answered next, etc., etc. But because of the rules that I mentioned about only being able to answer questions on certain days, you'd end up with some people just never being able to answer their question because Delphi would ask theirs, and then you'd have another place asking theirs, and then after that it would be like, oh, well, sorry, sun's gone down, lads. It's actually not the day you can ask questions anymore. You'll have to wait till next month. Okay, next question comes from Deadwolf25, another one of my members. Thank you for hitting the join button, bud. Massively appreciated. Why is the butler the one who is the evil guy in Dead of the Night, and what is the thing on his forehead? So, obviously, in Dead of the Night, we see Dark Godfrey and Godfrey. That's in the intro, that's throughout the entirety of when we're playing the game, and it's in the outro. It's basically the only interesting thing that I feel like happens to that character, other than him going, "Okay, sir," and like doing all his sort of cliched butler stuff while you're playing the map. He basically starts off kidnapping Alistair, and then he pretends to be good for the duration of the playtime, and then he ends up killing the characters at the end and getting shot by Scarlet, right? The question of why he's evil is actually something that I do have a reasonable answer for. Godfrey, unfortunately, was preyed on by vampires. Yes, he was preyed on by Nosferatu. I think that's the plural, Nosferatu? Nosferatus? I don't know. He was preyed on by vampires weeks before the events of Dead of the Night, and it's when he was preyed on by those vampires that he started losing his memory, he started having these problems, and that ties right in with him having this mark on his forehead and the kind of darkness taking a place inside his brain. It's pretty standard vampire mythology and lore, I'm pretty sure, that when you start getting bitten by vampires and they start sucking your blood at night, you start to lose your memory, you start to be forgetful, you certainly don't remember the night before and things like that. They have that kind of effect on people. And so the problems that Godfrey is facing tie right in with the fact that he was bitten by that vampire. He even draws a picture of it. If you go down into the wine cellar, you can see a picture of the vampire that he drew it's a terrible picture, but it's a picture regardless. And I'm presuming that that is kind of the gateway into him then being also a very easy target to then go on and be controlled by this mystical, strange order that we know nothing about with the gold masks, and they then get him to do their bidding and kidnap Alistair, etc. Now, another thing that is kind of like an obvious reason why it would be him, not the other characters, is that Godfrey literally lives in Alistair's mansion. And they're trying to get to Alistair, and so it makes sense to get the guy closest to Alistair to do their dirty work for them, and so I think that's probably part of the reason why he's the evil one as well, whereas the other three characters aren't evil. Like, they're just visiting him at a party, whereas Godfrey is with him and in his house all the time. The thing on his forehead is the same thing that we see on Bruno's forehead in Voyage of Despair. It's a mark of some kind that indicates that you're bad. We also saw it on the other bad guy in the Voyage intro. Clearly, it's some kind of mark of significance that is related to the Order. We don't exactly know what the Dark Godfrey stuff is, whether that's related to the Order specifically or whether that's a vampire-specific thing, but the mark is going to be somewhere amongst those sort of two worlds. Anyway, I've really got to wrap this up because we've already been talking for a pretty long amount of time on these two questions, and I've got a plane to catch, like I said. Drop a like on the video, guys. Story Sundays next week might be delayed an extra week because I think I'm still going to be away, and I don't think I'm going to have a way to make a video while I'm away, so it might be 2 weeks until the next episode again. Sorry about that, there's just nothing I can do. Christmas is Christmas, you kind of just got to take the break. But thanks for watching, drop a like I've said, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.